Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, good afternoon to everyone. Uh, I think in the last lecture we have started with the introduction to UML, that is Unified. Uh, what is the full form of UML? I have started with the UML introduction to UML. What is UML?
Unified Modeling Language.
Yes, Unified Modeling Language. So, related with UML, what I have started with. I think मैंने उसमें आपको बताया what are the different types of UML, the different modeling concepts. Am I right?
Your purpose, need of UML, and building blocks of UML.
Yes, 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 yes. So I think in the building blocks of UML, I've explained you the concepts, and I think we can proceed further to understand something more about the UML. See, in your syllabus, it is just an introduction to UML. Okay, but you should be able to understand what are the different types of diagrams available under the UML, because it is modeling language where we have to show the development of the program. Okay, through the pictorial view or graphical view. Okay, so UML is used to simplify the complex process of software design. So actually I have to design something, a software I have to design. So in that case, we have to show that the model should be developed in such a manner that should be understood by each and everywhere, by each and everyone. So if that is represented in a graphical sense or in a pictorial sense, then it would be understood more properly. Okay, so in that case, if I take an example, today we will see the example, the basic diagram used in the UML, and using that diagram we will be able to understand the concept of UML. Okay, again I'm saying, you in your syllabus it is just an introduction to UML. Okay, but to understand this UML, at least we should be able to show with one example or with one type of UML. Okay, so today we are going to see that. Now, in the last, I have just explained you the building block, but today we'll be seeing something more on that. So, when you talk about this UML, it is a standard language for specifying. Now, this is also important. I want everyone of you to just write it down what I'm writing on the open board. Now, when you talk about this UML, Unified Modeling Language, now it is a standard language for. This is very important. It is a standard language for specifying. Number one, specifying. Number two, visualization. This is a definition directly taken. Okay, so it is a standard language for specifying, visualizing, constructing. So instead of saying visualization, we can just write down visualizing, constructing, and documenting. So in this UML, you will be able to specify, you will be able to visualize, you will be able to construct, and after doing this, you will be able to document this. What this is related with the software system. Okay, so documenting the artifacts of software system software system. So this is more important. Okay, so whenever we have to develop a software. Okay, now actually when you talk about the DBMS, you will be always talking about the object oriented. Okay, आपने oops किया होगा. Have you studied the oops, object oriented programming, OOPS? Have you studied the oops in your previous semester?
Yes, sir.
Huh. So when you talk about the oops, that is all related with the that is related with the object, that is related with the function, the operations related with that. So whatever this you have studied, that is all object oriented. Now here also, whenever you have to develop a software system, in that case, under this unified modeling language, you should be able to specify, you should be able to visualize, you should be able to construct, and after that you should be able to document. Okay, so the software could be developed. Now this is actually, when you talk about the visualization, it is understood that this is a graphical notation for modeling various aspects of software system. Okay, so when you talk about this visualization, it is a graphical notation for modeling various aspects of software system. So ultimate goal is to develop the software system. The ultimate goal is to develop the software system. So how it could be able to graphically present, how the model could be able to graphically present, so that the various aspects of software system could be presented, so that the various aspects of software system could be presented in the visualization form. That is more important. Now something more on this, when you talk about this UML, it was created by object management group, OMG. This is also just to have a knowledge about this. UML was created by OMG, that is object management group. Object management group in 1997. In 1997, and there was a first version, that is UML 1.0 or 1.0. Okay, जैसे अभी industry is 4.0, it is now booming. Similarly, UML, the first version was UML 1.0 or 1.0. This specification draft was proposed to the OMG in 1997. Okay, so the first version was OML 1.0, the specification draft. So under this, we will be able to understand that when you talk about this OML, there are important diagrams. There are important diagrams. Now we are gradually moving towards the diagrams. OML, sorry, UML, UML diagrams. Now under these UML diagrams, there are, you can split into, or we can classify into two types. Now these diagrams, अभी इस डायग्राम में से हम एक important basic diagram जो लेने वाले हैं, that is a class diagram, and something more related with the class diagram I have explained you in very briefly in my previous lecture. Okay, so यहाँ पे हम देखेंगे in detail that in this UML diagrams we have two use specific diagrams. One is called as a structural diagram, and other one is called as a behavioral diagram. This everything I have explained you in my previous lecture. Structural diagram and behavioral diagram. Structural diagram and behavioral diagram. Now you will be able to understand that the structure means what. Already I have told you the structure is nothing but it is a static aspect of the system. The model, whenever you are developing the model, what are the basic building blocks you require to develop the system? So this structural diagram will speak about the static aspect. The static aspect. Now, these are the words taken from the textbook directly, so that you will be able to remember this and you will be able to write down in your exam also. Okay. So, static, it represents the static aspect of the system. Now, when it represents the static aspect in the behavioral model, you will be able to know that this will be able to basically capture the dynamic aspect of the system. So, here you have a dynamic aspect of the system. It is obvious. Now, when it is a dynamic, it means it will show its behavior. Okay, dynamic means your behavioral gets changed depending upon the system. The behavioral may change. That is, this behavioral model diagram is also called as a functional model. It depends upon the function. So functional model. So structural diagram will give you the understanding that the representation will be shown in the be shown by the static aspect, that is a building block, and behavioral will show the function related in that particular block. okay, or different classes. Whenever I'll be talking about the class diagram, that time it will be more clear. So whenever you talk about the behavioral, just try to understand the how the system works, how the function of the every block works. That will come under the behavioral diagram. That is also called as a dynamic aspect. Okay, it shows the basically the it captures the dynamic aspect, and in structural it gives you the static aspect. That is which are the thing but the what are the different entities into consideration, or which are the different blocks which are considered to develop the system. Okay, so in this also we have to understand the different the types of diagrams. So when I talk about the structural diagram, you talk about the structural diagram. In the structural diagram we also have many. Out of this we have some 4 to 5 are there. ये भी हम डिटेल में नहीं जाएंगे, इसमें से हम एक इम्पोर्टेंट लेंगे, दैट इज अ बेसिक डायग्राम टू अंडरस्टैंड द यूएमएल. That is a basic diagram to understand the UML, and that is your class diagram. So your class diagram will come under the structural diagram. So you have class diagram, you have object diagram, then you have a package diagram, then you have de- deployment diagram, and the last would be your component. इसके अलावा भी है, but these are important one. Class diagram, object diagram, package diagram, deployment diagram, and component diagram. Okay. So whenever you talk about these types of structural diagram, these are the five. Now in this diagram, uh, we will be talking about the class diagram in detail. Okay, we will be talking about the class diagram in detail, and we will be seeing that how this structural diagram or the blocks which are important to understand this concept of UML, and in that how this class diagram is important, because the first diagram which was developed was the class diagram. Okay, before I start with the class diagram, let me also tell you what are the types of behavioral diagram also. So we also have this is structural may we have types. In behavioral diagram also we have types. Behavioral diagram also we have types. So here also we have five. So we can just mention five, four out of that. So one is called as a activity diagram. Then the state transition diagram. देन द यूज केस डायग्राम, ये भी मैंने आपको पिछले इसमें बताया था. एंड यू ऑल्सो हैव अ इंटरैक्शन डायग्राम, यू ऑल्सो हैव अ इंटरैक्शन डायग्राम, you also have an interaction diagram. Okay, so these are the four, and here we have five. So first we will just see what is the class diagram, and in briefly I can just explain you what is a object, what is a package diagram, deployment diagram, and component diagram. Okay, so we can start with the important diagram, that is a class diagram. So please write down the heading as class diagram. So today we'll be talking about the class diagram. We will see what is this class diagram, and we will see with an example. Because again, I'm telling you this is the representation, okay, visualization of the diagram. So here you should be able to understand how this diagram can be shown. Okay, so we will see this. Now see here, when you talk about the class diagram, okay, now you must be oops में भी आपने पढ़ा होगा what are classes, how do you show the classes in the parentheses. Okay, then the function, then operations. So the concept which you have studied in the oops, the same thing we can apply here also in the class diagram. Whenever you have to show any class, here it will be shown in a box. Okay, now this is also not new to you, because हम जब relational model देख रहे थे उसमें भी हमने देखा था कि हाउ द टू एंटिटीज कैन बी शोन. ओके, हमने जब देखा था कि द डायमेंशंस ऑफ द रिलेशनशिप, वन डायमेंशन, टू डायमेंशन. सो इन दैट हमने देखा था कि if I have to show the relationship between the two entities, so the two entities will play an important role. And if I have to show the relationship, it will be shown by the diamond. Okay, so the concept of the class diagram is here also the same, but here the representation is in the form of UML. So how it can be represented? So we can first see with an example. If I have to show the class, okay, now the if I have to show the class, then it will be having some properties, and there will be some additional information about the class. So if I have to show that thing, you can show in a box. So if this is a box, this box will contain three parts. The first part will contain the name of the class. So the first one will be the class name. The first will be the class name. This is in general I'm talking about. We will see with a specific example. So first block will talk about the class name. The second will talk about the properties. So it will be called as a class attributes. Class attributes. And the last will talk about the operation of the class operation. We are not going into the detail of this. I hope you understand the class, you understand the function. Okay, so the same thing applies here also. So when you talk about the class diagram, in general it will be class name, then you will be having the class attributes, and you will be having the class operation. Okay, now here if I have to specify with an example, the best example would be the student. Okay, now here, now see, when I'm talking about the class diagram, I'm talking about single class. Okay, लेकिन हम जब सिस्टम डेवलप करते हैं, when you develop a software system using the UML, you don't rely only upon a single class. There would be a many number of class diagrams, okay, which will be associated with each other. तो रिलेशनशिप जब हम देखेंगे, इन रिलेशनशिप डायग्राम ऑल्सो वी हैव टू शो दैट हाउ दिस टू क्लासेस आर रिलेटेड. यहाँ पे मैं सिर्फ आपको एक क्लास बता रहा हूँ विद एन एग्जाम्पल. सो द एग्जाम्पल विच हैव टेकन is the student. So can I just say that this particular class diagram will have three blocks. The first top will have the class name. So here I can just write down the class name as student. Okay, student. Then I can take the new properties of the student, like I can take the name as an attribute, I can take the roll number as an attribute, I can take the contact number as an attribute, I can take the address as an attribute. Okay, so I have just taken two attributes of the properties as name and roll number. Name and roll number. And the class operation, so what operation is performed by this particular class. Okay, so here actually I have to create a database. So I would be able to create the record of the student, each and every student. So here I have to create the record. This example I have taken from the textbook Ramkrishnan. So create record. Now how do you specify this is an operation? So you have to just show this particular bracket. So create record bracket, this is circular bracket. Okay, now this is an example of a class diagram. This is an example of a class diagram. But I have told you that under this UML, you will be able to show the notations. There are different notations which are used. Okay, because it is a graphical representation of a system. So here you will be able to just see that there is a name of a class as a student, with attributes as name and roll number, and with the operation as create record. Now this thing again, I can have some more information, because the ultimate goal is that the UML should be able to understand by each and everyone. It should be able to understand by the main programmer who are working under this particular project. It should be also able to understand, should be able to understand by the non programmer, जिनको प्रोग्रामिंग नहीं आती है, जिनको कोडिंग नहीं आती है, but they will be able to understand by the the pictorial view by the visualization. So विजुअलाइजेशन के लिए हम इसको और कैसे क्या सिंप्लीफाई कर सकते हैं, हाउ मोर वी कैन सिंप्लीफाई दिस पर्टिकुलर क्लास डायग्राम, वी विल सी दिस. ओके, तो दिस इज एग्जाम्पल आई हैव टेकन. आई कैन सिंप्लीफाई दिस मोर. How I can simplify? I can just see what I can modify this particular class diagram as what, because you have already know when I'm taking the attributes, you should be able to also specify the type of field used. For example, अब अगर वही मैंने, if I have to add more information on that, how can I add? See here again, the class name would be student. Now I can do one thing. Now the second column is about the attributes. So I can do one thing. I will also mention the type of field or the type of attribute. Here, if I'm mentioning the name of the student, so you know it will be always the type will be string. So type of the field or the type of the entity or type of the attribute would be string. It will be integer. It will be floating. So there are many attributes, or there are many types are there. Okay. So if I take name as a string, then come the roll number. It will be roll number will be your integer. It will be your integer int. Okay. Now can you see the develop? I have make it more visualize. I have made it more clear. Okay, I have added more information on the previous class diagram, so that it should be more informative. It should be more informative. Okay, so again, what thing I can do? I can what is the operation here? It is a create operation. Create record. Create record. Okay, I have shown this by bracket. Okay, तो यहाँ पे name, after name I have put up the colon. Here after name I have put up the colon. So can I do the same thing? After this bracket I will put up the colon. Now the important thing is the operation. What do you want from this operation? Record, that is a create record. What is a returning type? So the returning type could be, I will specify the returning type would be integer. Okay, you can mention as per your requirement. Here I want that the create record should give me the should return me the value of an integer. That is as simple as it is. Should give me the value of an integer. Now once you do this, once you do this, then comes that whether I can do something more on this particular class diagram which you see in front of your screen, that something more can be added so that it becomes more informative. Now if I have to become more informative, now here comes the picture of now here comes the role of your UML under the class diagram, that there are different notations which are used. There are different notations which are used. Now which are the notations? Here whenever I have to show something, okay, the notations, I think these notations are also clear to everyone, because you must have studied in the oops subject. Like whenever you have to show something the in the form of a public, so plus will be represented by public, negative will be represented by private, and hashtag is represented by protected. Protected. Okay, so these are the different notations which are used in the oops. The same notation is used in the UML, so that the class diagram should be more informative. So we can introduce plus for public, minus for private, and hashtag for protected. Now how we can introduce in this particular class diagram, see here now. So I will be writing down the same thing here. I have the class name as student. Then I can do one thing, that this name I want to be public, so I can just write down plus followed by name, the type as string. Then suppose I want this should be private, the roll number, so it should be minus roll number, the type is int, that is integer. Then suppose I want the operation should be protected, I can just introduce hashtag create record. bracket and int. So this ultimately, this is a class diagram. This is a class diagram which will give you the information about the attributes, the type of attributes which has to be mentioned, whether it should be public, private, or protected, and it also gives you the class operation. Okay, so with this example, you should be able to understand what is a class diagram. What is a class diagram? अब ये जो एक class diagram है, this is in the system, you know that there would be a many different classes. There would be many different classes. So these classes will be actually connected with each other with some relation, with some relation. Okay, so that is why we have a relational model which is plays an important role in the class diagram. Okay, so simple thing is that to show the relationship between the two classes, जैसे हमने relational model में पढ़ा था, you have different entities and how these different entities are related with each other. And if you remember, if we are drawing the link between the two entities in a continuous manner or continuous line, it shows it shows the relationship between entities. And if it is in the dotted form, it shows the dependency. So somewhat it is the same. The concept is the same. Somewhat the concept is the same. Now what is that concept, we will see when you talk about this relational one. Okay, now when you talk about the relational one, this relational can be shown, this can be shown in five different ways. The relationship can be shown, I'm talking about the relationship between the classes. There are n number of classes in the system. So whenever you are developing your software system, okay, you, while developing the system software system, you have to handle different relationship between the different classes. For example, if I take a class of a student, there would be a class of a teacher, there would be a class of the non-teaching staff. So there could be number of classes, and how these classes are related with each other. To show this relationship, we have to understand the five software modeling. What are the five different relationship models used in the class diagram? Okay, so you can just write down the heading as relational models used in class diagrams. Okay, relational models used in class diagram. Now here also there are there are five other. So it could be your association, it could be your dependency. See, a dependency आया, इसका मतलब you know that we have shown this dependency by using the dotted line. Then it could be aggregation. See, these are simple terms, you will be able to understand this. Okay, I'll be just explaining you one or two, the rest of thing you can do by yourself. The fourth one is the composition, and fifth one is the generalization. So relational models used in class diagrams. So how do you show the relationship between the classes? It can be shown through the association, it can be shown through the dependency, it can be shown through the aggregation, it can be shown through the composition, it can be shown through the generalization. Okay. Now here to explain you about this, just talk about, we will see the association and the dependency. The rest of the thing you can just do by yourself. See the association, this is simple one. Whenever you have to show the association between the two, for example, if I am having a class 1 2 3 blocks, the other class with 1 2 and 3 blocks, the class name is suppose teacher, and here the class is student. और एक इम्पॉर्टेंट बात है इसमें, लेट मी टेल यू वन थिंग मोर क्लियर, बिकॉज समटाइम्स स्टूडेंट्स को ये भी कंफ्यूजन होता है. नाउ व्हेन आई एम राइटिंग डाउन हियर टीचर, it means this is for a single instance. This is for a single instance. This is for a single instance. Single instance means this is for one teacher. This is not for the teachers. This is for a single teacher. That is called as a single instance. When you say three instances, you actually talk about three teachers, three classes of teachers. Okay, so this is only one instance. That is a one teacher. Now, when you talk about this one instance, so teacher is one instance and student is one instance, and they are associated with the. We are talking about association. We are talking about the association. So when there is association between the teacher and student, this is just shown by a single line. Okay. Now how can I? Now again the problem comes. Yes, if you are a programmer, you will be able to understand the meaning of this association, a single line. Okay, but there is a non-programmer or there is a layman who is not having the technical knowledge about this, so you have to make it more informative by adding more graphical representations, or the making it more informative through the visuals. So how we can do that? You can just write down on the link that teaches to, teaches, teaches to, teaches to. Now here, by drawing a simple line between the teacher and the student, it might also happen that student teaches to teacher instead of going in this other way. That whether teacher teaches to the student, or whether student teaches to teacher. So to show that, we have a notation. That notation is block arrow, the head of the block arrow, the head of the block arrow. So this is how it has to be shown. So the arrow is pointing towards the student. So it implies that teacher teaches to the student. Okay, that is the meaning of this. I haven't mentioned the attributes, I haven't mentioned the operation. I have just mentioned two classes with the name of teacher, and the other class is the student, and the association is shown by the single line on which there is written the relationship, that is a teaches to, and the arrowhead, block arrowhead is shown to show that it is teacher teaches to the student. That is the meaning. Okay. Now here, now it might also happen that जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था the different instances. Now here the teacher is only one instance, so that one instance can be shown here on the link. You can just write down one here, and here you can just mention one dot asterisk, one dot asterisk. So one dot asterisk means more than one students, मोर देन वन स्टूडेंट्स. ओके, यहाँ पे लिखते समय आपने एक स्टूडेंट का क्लास लिखा, बट हियर वन डॉट स्टार, इट इम्प्लाइज इट इज मोर देन वन, it is more than one. Okay, sometimes if you do not like this, you can mention the number of instances also, that is also fine. So you can just mention the number also. For example, if I write down 6, यहाँ पे एक, यहाँ पे 6, it means one teacher teaches to 6 students, as simple as it is. And if you do not want to show the specific number, you can just show by drawing, just mentioning one dot asterisk, one dot asterisk. Okay, one dot asterisk. So there are different notations which are used in the UML. Okay, there are different notations which are used in the UML. So this is called as a association between the teacher class and the student class. Any questions so far? Any questions so far?
No, sir.
देखो, ये ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि इट्स अ वन वे कम्युनिकेशन. आई एम स्पीकिंग आउट, आई डोंट नो व्हाट यू आर डूइंग ऑन द अदर साइड. आप सो रहे हो, आर यू टेकिंग नैप? सो आई डोंट नो. सो देयर हैज टू बी एन एक्नॉलेजमेंट, देयर हैज टू बी सम क्वेश्चन इफ यू हैव. ओके, नहीं तो मैं बोलते जा रहा हूँ एंड यू आर नॉट अंडरस्टैंडिंग एनीथिंग. So this is a simple association. And now the dependency already we have studied. You can show the dependency if I'm having the class of an employee. I'm just writing down the class name without attributes and without operation. And there is suppose family. Now this is a family of this employee, remember. Okay. And the association between the family, because see here, family, when I talk about the family, these are nothing but the dependents on this particular employee. Okay, so they are the dependents, remember. And whenever you have to show some dependency between the two classes, it is simple, you have to show by the dotted line. You have to show by the dotted line. Okay, so this is as simple as it is. It is just shown by the dotted line to show the relationship between the two classes. One is dependent and the other one is independent. Okay, that is a way how to show the relationship between the two classes. Now, similarly, I would request you to go for the remaining three, okay, because these are the simple one, and try to understand some of the notations which are used in the UML. Okay, it is just an introduction, but you should be able to know this. Okay, the notations used, the different diagrams, the important structural diagram and the behavioral diagram. In the structural, you have, there are some there are again more types of the diagrams in the structural. There are again more diagrams in the types of diagrams in your behavior also. Okay, so here I have just given you the class diagram, and in the class diagram we have also seen how the relationship is modeling is done to show the relationship between the two classes. Okay, now I think we can proceed further. I will just give you the brief understanding about the other things. Now you can just write down one sentence about the class diagram. Please write down, just write down one sentence about the class diagram. It is a basic diagram of UML. This is a basic diagram of UML. This is a basic diagram of UML. I hope all of you are writing. I'll be checking your registers afterwards. You will be resuming to the college very soon. So during your first lecture, during your first visit to college, come with your notebook. Okay, your register of your DBMS. So क्लास डायग्राम में आपने लिखा है कि it is the basic diagram of UML. Okay, write down one more sentence. It shows the relationships between classes. It shows the relationship between classes and pertinent information about classes themselves. And pertinent, pertinent, and pertinent information about classes, and pertinent information about themselves. Okay, so we have talked about, so you will be doing this as an homework. Please do the remaining three: aggregation, composition and generalization. So we have just talked about the class diagram. Just quickly we will go with the object diagram. Okay, don't write anything about this, I will just give you the brief understanding. Now when you talk about the object diagram, now this can be described as an instance of class diagram. It can be described as an instance of class diagram. Objects are real life scenarios. So under this object oriented programming, you know the objects. Okay, so these are the actual real life scenarios where we where we have to implement the system. So these object diagrams are a set of objects and their relationships just like class diagram. So it is similar to the class diagram. Your object diagram is similar to the your class diagram. Okay, they are used to build prototype of a system from practical perspective. Now in your object diagram, you will be actually developing a prototype of a system. Actually मुझे practical perspective I have a practical perspective. From this practical perspective, how we can make a prototype. So this prototype can be made by the object diagram. This prototype can be made by using the object diagram. So object diagram is mostly used to build the prototype of a system from practical perspective. From practical perspective. That is the meaning. Okay. from practical perspective. Now when you talk about this object, remember this object here, it only means that a set of objects and their relationships. जैसे क्लास में हमने देखा था कि डिफरेंट डिफरेंट क्लासेस एंड देयर रिलेशनशिप, वैसे ही इन ऑब्जेक्ट डायग्राम डिफरेंट डिफरेंट ऑब्जेक्ट्स, नाउ डिफरेंट डिफरेंट ऑब्जेक्ट्स, इट इज लाइक रियल लाइफ सिनारियोज, बिकॉज हमको प्रैक्टिकल एस्पेक्ट से, प्रैक्टिकल पर्सपेक्टिव से हमको प्रोटोटाइप बनाना है. तो प्रोटोटाइप बनाने के लिए वी रिक्वायर दिस ऑब्जेक्ट डायग्राम, एंड दिस ऑब्जेक्ट डायग्राम रिक्वायर्स द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन डिफरेंट डिफरेंट ऑब्जेक्ट्स, and these objects are nothing but these are the real life scenarios. Okay, so which has to be implemented in a system. So different different sets of objects and their relationships are used in the object diagram, are used in the object diagram, are used in the object diagram. That is the meaning. Now what do you mean by package diagram? In the package diagram it shows the जैसे in the C language hash include, या फिर आप you must have also studied in the microcontroller, in the key language we include different different libraries. So whenever you talk about the package diagram, it only talks about the structure of the library and the structure of the package level which are used in the software system. So whatever the libraries you used, or whatever the packages you used, these are all available in the package diagram. These are all available in the package diagram. So it actually shows the structure of the library and the packages, structure of the libraries and the packages which are used to develop the software system. That is the meaning of this package diagram. Then deployment diagram. Then in deployment diagram, actually this is the simple one. How this hardware and software are implemented or deployed in the system. This is also important. Try to understand the concept. When you talk about huh, when you talk about the system, software system, in your software system, if it is a firmware where you have to implement the hardware as well as the software, so how these hardware and the software are implemented or deployed in the software system, or you can say how they are integrated to make this software system as a to make this software system to work in a proper way. So how they are integrated with each other, so that will come under the deployment diagram. So when you have the hardware and whenever you have the software, so I can configure this hardware and I can configure the software, okay, in a distributed system network. Because to develop a software system you require hardware as well as software, but under the distributed system network, what I mean to say that there would be more than one or two software which are required to make a bigger system, software system. So how these integrated software are configured, how this hardware is configured to make a system software, that is present in the deployment diagram. That is present in the deployment diagram. That is as simple as it is. Okay, so deployment diagram is important. After the deployment diagram, then there is a component diagram. Now here component diagram, it indicates that what are the different components which are considered to make this system, to make the software system. Okay, so what different components, the small components which are considered for making a system, that will come under the component diagram, as simple as it is. Okay, so we have seen the class diagram in detail. Object diagram is related with the class diagram, in which you have object set and the relationship between the object sets in the object diagram. Package will talk about the library and the packages which are used in the software system. Deployment will talk about the configuration of hardware as well as software, okay, to in a distributed system network. Okay, and components are the small important factors which are considered to make the system, to make the software system. Okay, see, जब मैंने ये सब बता रहा था तो एक्चुअली आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द स्ट्रक्चर डायग्राम. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द कि वो मॉडल कैसा रहेगा, वो मॉडल कैसा रहेगा. ओके, वो मॉडल कैसा रहेगा, या फिर आई कैन से हाउ द प्रोटोटाइप ऑफ दैट मॉडल वुड बी. So everywhere I haven't talked about the function. Sorry, I haven't talked about the behavior. I haven't talked about the function. I have just talked about कि क्या क्या चीज़ें लगने वाली है. What structure I require to build up the software system. That is the meaning of this. Okay. So this is about the structural diagram. Then if you talk about the behavioral, okay, now in this behavioral you can just make out it is an activity diagram, what activity is going on, it is a state transition diagram, it is a use case diagram, and what are the interactions. When you talk about the interactions, it is again the function between the different classes. Okay, so in the behavioral diagram, when you talk, let me talk about the interaction first. Now, when you talk about the interaction diagram, it shows an interaction between a group of collaborative objects. अभी ऑब्जेक्ट कहाँ से आया, ऑब्जेक्ट आपका आया आया है स्ट्रक्चरल डायग्राम में से. ये ऑब्जेक्ट आपका कहाँ से है, स्ट्रक्चरल डायग्राम में से. सो व्हेन आई हैव टू शो एन इंटरेक्शन बिटवीन अ ग्रुप ऑफ कोलैबोरेटिव ऑब्जेक्ट्स, the groups sorry, the objects of the same type to form a group. So if I have to show the interaction, so that interaction can be shown. So there are two types of collaboration diagram. Okay, there are two types of collaboration diagram, or you can say, instead of saying that one, you can just say, when you talk about this interaction diagram, this interaction diagram can be of two type, that is a sequence diagram, or it can be collaborative diagram. We will not go into the detail of this. Collaboration diagram, okay. So whenever you talk about the interaction between the group of collaborative objects, it will be either in the sequence diagram or it will be in the collaboration diagram. Okay, when you talk about the interaction. Now when you talk about the state transition diagram, when you talk about the state transition diagram, now this state transition, this is sometimes also called as a chart. This is sometimes also called as a chart. When you talk about this state transition diagram, it describes behavior of instances of a class in terms of states, transition, and of events. Okay. Now, when you talk about the state, so when you go from one state to other state, okay, with the with the some instances, or with the because of some behavior. So because of the behavior, because of some environment change, whenever there is a transition, so this is called as a state transition. It is called as a state transition diagram. So it actually speaks about the behavioral of instances of a क्लास इन टर्म्स ऑफ स्टेट्स. बिकॉज यहाँ पे जो स्टेट रहेगा, सपोज यहाँ पे स्टेट है एक्स, हियर द स्टेट इज वाई, बिकॉज ऑफ सम रीजन इट मे गो टू स्टेट जेड. So there is a change of the states. So it shows the behavioral from one state to the other state. So there is a transition of events. There is a transition of events from x to y, y to z. Okay, so I can just make that this is one event, this is the other event. These are called as the instances. These are called as the instances. So one event, this is second, this is the next event, this is the third event. These two, no two events are same. No two events are same. They are all different events. Okay, so this transition from one event to the other event, or one state to the other state, is covered in a particular chart, which is called as a state transition diagram. That is called as a state transition diagram. Okay, now what's the time? Okay, so this is also important use case. So I think this thing I can take in the next lecture, use case diagram. Okay, so I have just briefly explained you what is the interaction, because see, these are all self-explanatory. When you talk about the interaction, you will come to know what do you mean by interaction. When you talk about the state transition, you will be able to know the change of the state from one state to the other state. Activity also, this is also important, how that activities of from yeah, or at a particular state can be shown. So that is shown by the activity diagram. Okay, So I think in the next lecture I'll be able to cover the rest of the thing. Okay, so before I go, just I need to explain you what is the main purpose of using this UML. Okay, the main purpose of using of this UML is, the only reason is that, so that whenever we are developing a any software system, okay, and when there are many groups working on this system, the group may comprises of the programmer or non-programmer. There should be a common language which should be understood by each and everyone. It should be without the code, but it should be descriptive. It should be more informative. So to have this type of interaction or the development of the software system, they have developed a language which is used to uh, simplify the complex process of software design. Or whenever you go with the software development, it is actually the complex process. How we can simplify this process, complex process, into a simpler process. So that thing can be done by using the UML. And this UML is widely used in your banking sector, in your financial sector, in your transportation, in your retail industry, in your telecom industry. So everywhere this UML is used. Okay, so it is basically it is used to simplify your complex process of software development or software design. That is a main rationale behind using this UML. Because in this introduction to UML, you should be able to understand that why we go with the UML. Okay, so for that, the rest of the thing we will be seeing in the next lecture, the use case and the activity diagram. So the rest of the thing which I have given you as a homework, please do that. Okay, and try to understand the concept. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the next lecture. Any question you have, please ask.
No, sir.
अटेंडेंस हुआ क्या, ऐसा चेक करो.
हाँ सर हुआ है.
हो गया ना. ठीक है.
हाँ.
I think we can stop for today. We will see in the next lecture. Thank you.